Twitter. So, Ben, what a good place to welcome you to the news today. We can't trust national news. Can we trust local news?
Local, national, international, I don't think you can trust any of it, unfortunately, Brian, apart from UK column, of course. Let me just get that out there. So let me start with a quote, which I love. It's a fantastic quote. It comes from H.L. Mencken. Journalist is to politician as dog is to lamp post. And in that spirit, I shall proceed. Let's talk about LDRs, local democracy reporters. What are they? A fly-on-the-wall reporter explaining what local government decisions actually mean. Also, a reporter specialising in the workings of the local authority. A political reporter scrutinising councils, police, NHS and other public bodies, holding local authorities to account and getting people to care. That all sounds great, doesn't it? Let's find out a little bit more about the LDR scheme.
Local councils spend billions of pounds a year providing essential services which affect all our lives. They look after everything from bins to buses to social care. So knowing what they're up to is vital. The number of local journalists reporting on councils has been in steady decline. And that's where the Local Democracy Reporting Service, or LDRS, comes in. The LDRS finds out stories about UK councils and shares them with hundreds of regional news providers across the country. Local news companies employ 165 local democracy reporters. The BBC pays for them, and more than 1,000 approved news outlets can then broadcast or publish their work. And that means you and me, wherever we live in the UK, get to hear about what our councils are doing in our name. It helps the local news industry, it helps the BBC, but most of all, it helps us all know what's going on where we live. You can find out more by going to bbc.com/LNP.
Oh, okay. So it's the BBC covering for local councils. That's what it turns out to be. And actually, if you go to the LDRS website and you look in the, this is literally one page. This is all there is to the site. And in the top right-hand corner, you can click on terms and conditions. And in the bottom left, you can click on frequently asked questions. And it takes you directly to the BBC. Yeah. Oh, my clicker's stopped working for some reason. Would you mind knocking that on for me, please, Brian? Yeah, okay, very good. So if we just whiz through those two, yeah, it's BBC. It's a BBC operation. There are 165 of these people all across the UK, working at places like the Manchester Evening News, Hackney Citizen, the Liverpool Echo, and let's get a little taste of the kind of reporting that we can expect from these people. So we just click on to the next one. There you go. It's that kind of reporting. Yeah. So we just talked about the COVID scenario. That's what I like to call it, by the way. I think 2020, yeah, that's good. But let's call it the scenario or the operation, certainly not the pandemic. But you can see here in the mask, a local democracy reporter talking about the local council's policy towards COVID and lockdowns. It gives you a sense of what you're going to be getting from these people. And that's Charlotte Hall, and she works at the Oldham Times. And LDRs have been reported on for a while now by the UK column. They've been around for a couple of years, but this was flagged up to me in that interview I did a couple of weeks ago with Raja Mia. I hadn't personally heard of them before, but he mentioned that the Oldham Times actually employs a local democracy reporter. It's that lady we just saw in the mask, Charlotte Hall, and this is a recent article that she's published about council tax, which again I don't think gives you a good sense of what these reporters are doing and the level of scrutiny that they're applying. If you want to just flick that forward again for me, please, Brian, that'd be fantastic. We can see a quote here about council tax going up in Oldham, and it basically says, after receiving £5 million more from the government than first expected, Oldham is in a better financial position than first thought. but the local authority still needs to fill a £14 million budget hole from this year and make more than £8 million in cuts to stay in the green. So to do that, council chiefs will increase council tax by the maximum amount. The 5% or 4.99% increase will see council tax bills rise by £77 to £1,628 per year for the lowest band, £232 increase for the highest band, up to nearly £5,000 a year in council tax. And this is just going to happen. Right, so essentially, based on the Oldham Times, what the local democracy reporters are doing is just providing a mouthpiece, a platform for council policy. Right, that's it, and it's all paid for by the BBC, and it's all designed to progress the establishment agenda. Right, I think that's exactly what's happening here. And what else was going on in Oldham at the time? What else was the council involved in apart from issuing demands for more council tax? Well, we know that, for example, they were covering up grooming gang scandal. And they were publishing a number of hit pieces, 17 hit pieces, in fact, on Raja Mir, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, who was actually pointing out extraordinary levels of corruption in the council, but being attacked by Oldham Times, who employ a local democracy reporter. I think you get a good sense of what this is about, right? You know, and local media is in big trouble, and this LDR scheme is absolutely at the centre of it. I think councils, particularly given that we're seeing councils now cancelling elections, this year they're going to be cancelling elections. There is an absolute crisis in local media, and we need a completely new approach. Now, a bit of an update on the national media scene. I'm going to talk again about Tortoise, and I will probably need to do a longer check-in on them because there's a lot of stuff going on. But we spoke before Christmas about the fact that they just acquired the Observer, and as an extension of that, basically merged essentially with Guardian Media Group. They've just announced two co-CEOs. You can see on the left Emma Sullivan, who was the MD of Tortoise, and on the right, Richard Finesse, who was the Chief Strategy and Business Development Officer at the Guardian Media Group. He was there for 27 years. And those two are now going to be running Tortoise. They're going to be co-chiefs of the Tortoise business. James Harding made a statement, just click on one, saying that establishing the Observer as an independent company is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, which is interesting, actually, James Harding, because it's not an independent company, as we talked about previously. Like, you've basically merged with the Guardian Media Group, so you're being a bit liberal with the facts there, I would say. Also in that article, it goes on to say that Tortoise has appointed Beja Cummings to the position of digital editor of the new daily online paywalled version of the Observer. And this is Beja Cummings. You can see her here. She's been leading the audio arm, Tortoise Studios, where she was responsible for podcasts. And that includes responsible for publishing the takedown of Raja Mir that they published a couple of years ago now, as well as Hoaxed, which badly misrepresented the Hampstead supposed hoax, missing out key medical evidence that demonstrated that the children in question were actually sexually abused. They just decided to remove that from their 6-hour-long podcast episode, supposedly proving that whole thing was a hoax. She's been given a promotion as well. Also, going back to my report last week, I've been sent a really interesting link between actually Tortoise Media and Common Purpose. So if you remember, I highlighted the existence of this strategic partnership between the University of Manchester and Common Purpose. Actually turns out that this gentleman, Nazir Afzal, is the Chancellor of the University of Manchester, so he would have established that partnership, something he would have been responsible for. And this is a fascinating character. He's got an OBE, so this is a proper establishment fella. He's also the chair of the Safeguarding Committee at the Church of England, interestingly. As a practicing Muslim, I find that absolutely bizarre. I think we're going to talk about that in extra. And then before that, he was the CEO of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. So these people who are supposed to be looking into things like grooming gangs, he was the chief executive of that. And before that, he was the chief Crown Prosecutor, and he used to work for Keir Starmer, interestingly. And he's just set up this Common Purpose thing, and he's got very close links into Tortoise Media through a couple of appearances. One on this interview, which is up on YouTube, talking about whether there's such a thing as a fair trial. And then also, finally, this, if we click on one, we can see this live event in Manchester, which took place last year, talking about populism. And essentially, he was there to talk about the threats to democracy posed by people like Donald Trump. And he was interviewed by James Harding, direct link to Common Purpose there from Tortoise Media, which is the first time I've seen that. And also, interestingly, something I'm going to come back to next week because I haven't got time today. He was also on that panel with Joshi Herman from Mill Media, who are the other people who were very aggressively going after Raja Mir. So local media, national media in big trouble right now.
Thank you very much, Ben. And of course, it's beholden on all of us to be watching very carefully what media is in existence and what they have to say. But certainly we've got huge suspicions about media conglomerations which are getting more and more powerful and controlling more and more of the news we hear. We'll continue to report.